Hi students. I hope you're all doing well. Today I'm going to demonstrate how to make a double pie crust. The ingredients that we're going to be using today are flour, salt, shortening, and ice water. Just 4 ingredients to make this double pie crust. All right, let's talk about how much we're going to need of each. We're going to be using 2½ cups of flour. And you can add that flour to a large mixing bowl. We have 2½ cups of flour. We have 1 teaspoon of salt. So you'll need either a prep cup or you can use a little baking cup if you don't have a prep cup at home. 2/3 cup of shortening. Believe it or not, I found a 2/3 cup measure at home. So 2/3 cup of shortening. If you do not have a 2/3 cup measure, you can use 1/3 cup twice. Make sure when you're measuring your shortening, you pack it into the cup and level it with a straight edge metal spatula. Also going to be using 5 to 8 tablespoons of ice water. So I had the water in an aluminum bowl in the refrigerator ahead of time. I just took it out, I poured it into this glass bowl so you could see the ice water. If you try to get the water in the refrigerator ahead of time, if you do not have it cold ahead of time, you can add some ice cubes, but you want to be sure and make sure that that water is nice and cold. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that water should be nice and cold. Also, when it comes time to measuring, just go ahead and put a couple cups of water into a small stainless steel bowl, put it in the refrigerator. And when it comes time to making the pie crust, we're only going to use about 8 tablespoons from this ice cold water. All right, let's talk about equipment. So for equipment today, you'll need 1 large mixing bowl, a medium mixing bowl, your standards that we use when we're in the classroom in your toolkit, dry and liquid measuring cup, your fork. You're going to need a wooden or plastic spoon, a rubber scraper, and also this is what I'm using today for a straight edge. That'll work for me. So those are your basics. For specialty equipment to make the pastry pie crust, you need a rolling pin, a pastry blender. If you don't have a pastry blender at home, no worries. You can use 2 knives to actually do the cutting in, which is incorporating the fat, whether you're using shortening. If you don't actually, by the way, have shortening at home, you can use cold butter. So to get that fat into the flour, you can also use 2 knives. And then you need 9-inch dish to actually cut out the pie rounds. So I'm going to use this area to do that today because I do not actually have a dish that's 9 inches in diameter. I have something a little small, like a salad plate, and I have something a little large, like a dinner plate, but I don't have exactly a 9-inch. All right, so I think I've covered everything as far as the ingredients and the equipment that you need to make this recipe. Obviously, I washed my hands for 20 seconds in hot water. I have my rings off, and I have my kitchen counter nice and clean to get started. Oh, there's one thing that I left out. You also need about, and again, it does not have to be precise, a little extra flour. I have a little extra 1/4 cup here to flour up your counter and to flour your hands. So let's get started. The first thing that you want to do is combine your 1 teaspoon of salt into your flour. And I'm going to use this wooden spoon here and mix that. Okay. When you mix those 2 ingredients together, you want to use, do a nice figure 8 motion. Okay. Okay, so there we have our salt. And remember, the function of our salt is to give flavor. The function of our flour is to give structure to your baked product. The next thing we want to do is, with a pastry blender, cut in half of the shortening until the mixture resembles small peas. So here's my 2/3 cup. I'm going to use this small spoon, and I'm going to take about half of that my rubber scraper to get this out. There's one. And let me scoop out a little bit more. Put that into the flour. Okay, I'm going to put my tools aside here. All right, so we're going to take that shortening and we're going to cut in, and that means incorporate the fat, whether you're using shortening or maybe you substituted butter today to make this. So you want to work it in and work quickly. And you don't want to handle it with your hands because this part of there's a lot of warmth in this section of your hand. And again, we're making pastry. So we want our water to be ice cold and we want our fat to be cold. And why that is because we're looking for a flaky texture and we're looking for layers. And in order for that to occur, we need to have the fat nice and cold, and that will coat the gluten. So when we start adding the water, a tablespoon at a time, it will not saturate the flour. All right, so I'm working this in. And we're going to add in the remaining, use one of these knives, the remaining shortening in just a moment. We want every little bit of that in there. That fat makes the product nice and rich and tender. So let's keep on adding that in. Great, it's looking good. Okay, put down my pastry blender for just a moment. Grab my rubber scraper and the rest of my shortening. Okay, let's add that in there. So now we're going to cut in, and that means to incorporate. All of this in there. Okay. Having a difficult time getting that rubber scraper. I need a slightly smaller one than in this cup. I think that's just about all of it. Okay. So let's cut in the remaining shortening. Okay, I'm working that in, trying to work quickly, and we want to continue to do this until the mixture resembles small peas or coarse breadcrumbs. And we're getting there, So I'm really excited about making these apple tarts tomorrow. Kids love them. This recipe yields 2. That apple tart recipe that I posted this morning yields 2. So before we even make that mixture and think about that, we want to make our pie crust first. Okay, let's keep on incorporating. That shortening. We're almost there, it's looking good. Get the rest of this shortening in here. Okay. I'm going to put my pastry blender aside. Okay. Next, we're going to start sprinkling 1 tablespoon of water at a time. So here's my tablespoon. You're going to dip in. Get a full tablespoon and you're just going to sprinkle it around. And the tool that we're going to use is a fork. Okay, so we want to use our fork. Make sure we get that water spread around. throughout the mixture. Okay, I'm going to work that in there. It's 1 tablespoon. I don't know if we'll use, I'm sure we'll use at least 8. We may use a little bit more. Okay, it depends on the weather and the humidity. Today it's somewhat cold, so we may use 8 tablespoons. We may use 1 more. Okay, so that's 1 tablespoon. We're going to continue adding water until the dough just holds together. And as you can see, we still have a little ways to go. There's just 2. I think this part of the video is where I'm going to figure out how to speed this up. Otherwise, I'm going to be sending you a video that's an hour long. Clean my fork. Okay, let's go for tablespoon 3. Seems like hardly anything. A little at a time, okay? We don't want to oversaturate. We don't want to develop the gluten. That cold fat in there's coating it right now, so we don't saturate it, because we're making a product we're making a dough, and we're making a firm dough. Right? So we have to be really careful. We don't add a lot of liquid. It's different. We're using the pastry and biscuit method, but we're making pastry. When we use the pastry and biscuit method, when we cut the fat into the flour and then we made a well and added buttermilk, we were making those biscuits. That's a little different. We were making a soft dough. This is a firm dough, and we want to use very little liquid. We're making a product that's going to be very flaky. Okay, let's go for number 4. Should have done a little bit better spreading that around. Okay, that's what we really want to do, is spread that around. Okay, so you can kind of see what it looks like at 4, and we still have a little ways to go. I think I'm going to go ahead and pause the video right here and pick up again after I get to 8. Hi students, here we are at 7, and how do you know if it's ready? You should, if you take a little section between your thumb and your index finger, it should just start to hold together, and you can see it's just start holding together. So I'm going to put a little bit of flour on my hands and see if I can bring this together into bring all this dough together into a ball. Okay. Still a little crumbly, okay, because I wanted you to see that. And you've done this once before, right? You did something very similar to this when you made your southern biscuits. So I'm going to go ahead and add that number 8. Okay, we'll see if we're going to need 9. And you want to probably get those areas that still seem a little dry when you get down to the bottom. Move this around, clean off your fork. We should be able to bring this into a ball now. Okay, let's see how that goes. Remember, it's better to have it on the drier side. than on the wetter side. Get a much tastier. All right, great. This is good. So 8 worked. 8 it is. 8 tablespoons of ice cold water. Excellent. I'm going to take these items and just put these aside. Excellent. So I've gathered the dough together now into a ball. I am going to lightly flour my counter. Remember, light. We don't want to pick up too much flour, because if we have too much flour, it'll dry it out. Okay. Right, gather the dough into a ball, and we're going to divide the dough in half with a dough scraper. Look at that. Okay. So I do not have, I'm going to also move this ice water out of the way for now. I do not have a dough scraper, so I'm going, let me see, I'll use something a little sharper. Right, so I want to cut this in half. There we go, that worked pretty good. Okay, so now we have 2 even sections. We're going to put one to the side, and let's shape one at a time. Okay, so you have 2. Remember, we're making, the recipe for the apple tart calls for yields 2. So we're going to start with taking this first section, we have 2 sections, and we're going to form it into a patty. Okay, you want to keep it round. You want to keep it a patty because it's easier to roll it out into a pie round if you do that. You also want to add some flour to your rolling pin. Okay, so we have this patty. Lift it, make sure it's not sticking to your counter, and we're going to checkerboard it. To checkerboard it, you use this side of your hand, and you're going to just move left and right, and then up and down. Okay, and make sure it's just in a patty. You want to keep that nice shape. Okay. This allows you to shape it into that patty and not use this part of your hand to do that, because there's a lot of warmth there. We want to still keep everything nice and cold. Then you want to use your rolling pin, and we're rolling on a lightly floured surface. You want to start in the center always. And first we're going to go straight up, go back to the center, we're going to go to the right, center to the left, center to the right, center to the left. Okay, so always starting in the center and rolling out. You should try to do this counterclockwise motion. Okay, I'm going to stop right here. Make sure that I'm not rolling too hard. You really don't want it to. You want to lift it. Okay. So we did shape one half of the patty, checkerboarded it with the side of our hands, and we're going to repeat that for the second half. And we're going to roll it from the center out, working to keep the dough nice and round. So it's easy to patch this up. Okay, just like that. If you need it, we're going to roll it out a little bit more. Let's go to top. Good. Okay. Make sure that that's not sticking to your counter. And we want this about, oops, I have a little tear. So that did stick right there. So I need a little bit more flour. I'm going to put that back down, and then I'm going to patch this up. Brush off this dough. I'm going to patch this right in here, the piece that came off. And then brush off the excess. We don't want it dried out. Get that extra flour off of there. Okay. That looks good. So we need it about So this is about the size that I need, okay? Now this is just going to be a nice round, pastry round. Like I said, I do not have a dish that's exactly 9 inches. This is a little smaller. This is about 8. So if you have one that's 9, that's great. That's really what I'd like you to use. Yeah, this one is 8. So mine's going to be a little bit smaller. So if you can find one that's 9, that's perfect. This will work for now. So this is going to be a little bit smaller. And then what you want to do is use your butter knife and go all the way around and make your pastry round. So I would have rolled it slightly more to get that 9. Okay. And you want it nice and round. So this is one pastry round. So I do not have, I'm using a baking pan. If we were at school, we would put 2 diagonally for each team and put it right into the freezer. I'm using this right now to show you. I do not have parchment paper, so I'm just using this tin foil to line my pan so it doesn't stick to the pan. I'm just going to put one pastry round in one corner, and then I'm going to put the other pastry round in the others, and I'm going to freeze these until I videotape tomorrow to make the apple tarts. Okay, so this is day 1, just making the pastry rounds. All right, I'm going to have you watch the process over again. I'll keep these scraps aside. You can make strips and put cinnamon and sugar on them and bake them up if you'd like with your strips. All right, I have my second half. Again, we want to form this into a patty. I'm going to shape this into a patty. It's easier to roll it out into a round when we do that. We don't want to handle it. We want to checkerboard it. We want to handle it with the middle of our hand, so checkerboard it to keep it nice and round. Repeat as you did for the first. Flour your rolling pin in your hand, start in the center. We're going to go up first. Just keep on going around. Then again, we are working to keep this round. I'm going to lift this, check, make sure it's not sticking to the counter, which I think it is a little bit. This is where a dough scraper would come in handy. I'm just going to add a little bit more flour here. Then brush it off my hands, trying to keep my work area organized. Okay, there we go. Out. Careful not to roll it too tough because it'll stick. Patch this up. So again, my dish is a little smaller. It's not 9 inches. I'm going to have it match the other. Right, so I just wanted to make sure you should definitely, if you have that 9-inch plate, be able to get it to 9 inch. I'm just going to stop here because this is what I have to work with. I'll have to find something else to do with those scraps. Right, so this is a double pie crust to make 2 pastry rounds, R-O-U-N-D-S. And this is a pastry round. It's rolling out the pastry dough and then we used a plate, turned it upside down to get a nice circular round, pastry round. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? All right, I'm gonna put this diagonally right here. off my hand. Last thing I'm going to do is put some saran wrap on here. Right? I think I'm going to need 2 pieces because my saran wrap is not wide enough. And I'm going to freeze these and make the filling tomorrow for the apple tart. So until tomorrow, also, these could be refrigerated and I could make the tart in just a little bit if I wanted to. You don't have to freeze them. I could make the filling now. But I am going to freeze them because I'm not going to do the second part till tomorrow. So until tomorrow, here are your 2 pastry rounds. Your double pie crust recipe making 2 pastry rounds. See you guys tomorrow.